All right.
I did that for you.
YouTube video number 846. I don't know how many I got, but anyway. Horse doctor for a day is what we're talking about today.
Horse doctor.
Yeah, horse doctor. Okay. Mr. McBride, you ready for the pop test?
Dang, I'm good.
This is a 95 Mustang with a 5.0, manual transmission, 101,345
You
miles.
wouldn't happen to know where this is at now.
Cranks but won't start. Engine coolant fan is always on when you turn on the key. All right, it came in on the hook, basically. And that's right there in the service bay where we're working on it. All right, so the speedo on this one here, think about 100,000 miles, you can go around the world 4 times, right? You got 25,000 miles around the world. But how it died, the details were kind of sketchy. We weren't really sure how it died. We know it died, but we don't know how it died, right? All right, with a minimal amount of vehicular forensics, it became evident somebody had performed a brain transplant. They put another engine controller on it. All right, this is how we figured that out. The engine controller, and that's not an actual picture of the engine controller on that car, but it's one similar to it. The PCM was plugged in, and it was dangling by the wires in the passenger side floorboard. So somebody's plugged in another PCM, right? When the key was switched on, the engine coolant fan was just running all the time. It just constantly running. Okay, so here we go. Got some evidence here. Look at that little deal there. Whenever you got your, see how I got these colorful little wire hooks I'm trying to find. Oh, by the way, I lost my laser somewhere yesterday. I think it may be laying right here. No wonder I lost it. It was laying right there. Okay, smart. So basically, if you find that you have one, and pay attention to this on some of these cars here, these Ford cars, if you find that the coolant fan relay is running coolant fan's running all the time when you turn on the key, you're always going to suspect either that the engine controller is not powered up or it has gone stupid. Because on that Mercury Sable out there, I can unplug the engine controller, and when you turn on the key, as soon as you unplug the engine controller, the fan kicks on and starts running. And that's a flag. On some vehicles, now pay attention to this because it's really important, if you disconnect the engine coolant temperature sensor, the fan will kick on and run all the time. Because in the algorithm they typed, I guess they felt like if you don't know what the engine coolant sensor is, you err on the side of caution and you turn on the fan. One way or another, that's what was going on here, and this is kind of how it's wired up. You got a constant control relay module. It's got all these relays built into it, so you can't change those relays out. All right, so everybody's seen this. We got one of these here, you know, and we connected it to the E4 VIP test connector under the hood, and checked for codes. You know, me and Donnie were working on this one together. And snatched every DC and DTC in the library relating to automatic transmission hard faults. Why would we get so many transmission codes? Did you read the first slide about the car? What kind of transmission did it have in it? Manual transmission. If it has a manual transmission and you're pulling codes out of the engine controller for automatic transmission solenoids and everything, you can pretty well figure that it's got the wrong PCM in it. Somebody just got another one out of a Mustang, plugged it in there. May have bought it from salvage yard, I don't know. All right. It'd take rocket science to know that automatic transmission codes were out of place if it's got a 5-speed, gear stick sticking out of the console. Now this would have to have the right PCM. So it was ordered, came in the next day. When it was installed, it roared into life. Boom! It fired up. That's wonderful, isn't it? Just fires right up. We feel, hey, are we done? Nope. An experimental test run down the road went well at first, but the hotter it got, the worse it ran. At 3,000 RPM and above, it was bucking and jumping and backfiring through the exhaust and the intake. Now, when it's backfiring through the intake, we call that induction backfire. When it's backfiring out the exhaust, why does it backfire out the exhaust, and why does it backfire out the intake? Why does it backfire anyway? What's going on when it backfires? But where's that backfire coming from exactly? There's got to be fire. There's got to be an explosion taking place, or you wouldn't have any fire. They're backfiring.
Gas leaving cylinders.
Typically, got to be firing on it with an open valve, right? Either that, or it's lighting off after the mix has left. On my little Volkswagen Carmen Ghia that I had that had the little megaphone tailpipes on it. I could switch it off, driving down the road and fill the exhaust system up with gasoline, then turn the key back on, and it would go boom, it'd make big flames come out back, look like two shotguns back here. And, you can scare somebody behind you that's driving, you know, like a James Bond car. All right, this thick film ignition and signature PIP, we'll talk about that right now. Now, on this board over here, that ignition board over there, that distributor you see right there, it's one like this. It's an open bowl distributor, and what that means is, when you take this little module off and you pull it out, there's a sort of a port that goes up in there to this little stator. See those wires right there? These wires here plug into that. And so what you do is you're gonna put that in there, and of course, you know, you gotta put this little shaft down in there, and it goes in, it drives the camshaft drives this, and the oil pump is driven by that shaft, and that's typically standard procedure. And you put some little 7/32 or 5.5mm screws in there. You put some grease on here. That white, that dielectric grease, when you see grease coming with an electronic component like that, where it bolts up, you put that grease there, and that grease carries the heat out of the component, goes away. Well, it was kind of problematic because the distributor gets pretty hot itself, you know, so they wanted to run the thing cooler. And so what they had done by the time this Mustang came around is they moved the module onto a heat sink, and they put it up in there in the area where you're, well, like if you look at the back of the engine compartment where the bulkhead was, it was going actually into that open place underneath the grill on the front of the car where the wipers are. It goes in there pretty much. Or it could be somewhere else, sometimes on pickup somewhere else. But it ran a lot cooler because it was on its own little dedicated heat sink and it was in a cooler place. And after they moved them to that place, it almost never gave any trouble at all. We had a lot of these that failed, and early on. That came out in 1984. The earliest one was in '83, I think, came out on some of the Escort GTs and stuff. But one way or another, this is what that distributor looks when it's taken apart, and it's got this little main cup here, and you've got the gear. If you're ever taking one of these off, there is a special tool that you can get from Thexton. You drive that little roll pin out of there, that little roll pin that goes through that gear. They press that gear onto that shaft, and then they drill it and put the roll pin through there. So you better have a mark on that thing, because if you just try to stick it up in there, like Zane is doing with his phone over there, then you're basically going to wind up with the holes that won't line up. Got it? And so there's a special tool for pulling that gear off, and usually that gear is very hard to get off that shaft. But I mean, I got a kit over here. I used to use a little spanner with a balancer puller, and I would get along with that. But you got to be really careful, or you'll bust the gear teeth, and you can't just buy that gear by itself. You got to have a whole distributor. All right. So this is a closed bowl distributor, and that closed bowl distributor had that same flat on it, but it didn't have anything, you know, a place for that to plug in up in there. It was just totally sealed in there. And these are your connector right here. All right. So, like the PCM, we had already replaced. The TFI module was brand new, and it was an unfamiliar brand. It was one that I hadn't seen before. Whoever this might have been, they also had replaced the distributor cap and the rotor, but the spark plug wires were original, and they were routed like factory and all that. You can tell the spark plug wires are original because they have numbers on them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's going to run in the length of the wire. If you buy replacement wires, you won't find one, even from the dealer, that's got the numbers on them that tells where they're supposed to go. You see those are factory. Also, if you see spark plugs, typically they have a paint spot on top of them. On some makes, that means it's the original spark plug. One way or another, that was a different one. Now, I worked on a Bronco 2 one time for probably 3 or 4 hours, but was bucking and jumping and cutting up and all that kind of stuff. And whenever I found out what was wrong with it, somebody had put a module on it. They had bought it at some parts store somewhere that didn't. It was a no-name brand, and the module was no good. So I had to put a Motorcraft module on it. And after that experience of losing all that time because of that aftermarket module, if I saw one come into my service bay and they had a module they had bought from somewhere else and it was cutting up and bucking and jerking, the first thing I would always do was sell them a module. If they weren't willing to buy a module, I was done. A lot of times you'll fix them that way. All right, that was the same thing I was talking about here. That one got a new one. So it was replaced, but the bucking and jerking never changed. It just kept on bucking and jerking. And with a warm engine, we found it was really easy to duplicate the problem in the service bay. We could hold the throttle and get it to buck the snort and cut up right there. What does that mean? Now, that means we can scope it. We can get some stuff that we can read. We can get some more data that we couldn't get driving down the road with the tool we had in those days. And it would snort, backfire, and it would do the same way as just test driving it. So we put the scope on it. What's wrong with this picture?
Yeah, marks way too
Firing lines 3 and 2 were gone, number 7 was high. That is a screwball pattern. It didn't do that idling. It just did it when we were into it and when we were loaded. It was cut up, okay? So as the throttle was open and the engine attacked its way into the thousands, this pattern started to emerge on the left side of the screen. And the firing order on this one is 137265548. Now, I had told you guys early on about that when we first got our Bronco over there. It didn't run all that great. The guy was convinced it had a blown head gasket, and he donated it to us and that kind of thing. And so we put it around the yard on it. We didn't drive it on the road or nothing. We said, well, it runs good enough. When you cranked it up and you pull the radiator cap off, it started punching water out of there. You just swear it had a blown head gasket. But it turned out, as we were, working on it for something else, we found out that the guy had it wired up like a 302, and that was a 5.8. And the 302 in that year was 1542637A. And that one was 1372654.8, and he had wired it up like a 302. And not only was it making it run kind of crappy, it was also making it act like it had a blown head gasket because of when the cylinders were firing, which is really strange. But anyway, after we put the plug wires on there, right, it ran good. All right, the speed increased, the pattern became even more interesting like that. So we started losing 3 and 2 at 3,000 RPM. They just go completely away. And at the same time, those cylinders were gone. Cylinder 7 would be a lot taller. So what the heck did that mean? Anybody got any ideas?
Yeah, I remember you talking about how the posts were real close together. Sometimes they jumped the one that wasn't supposed to jump to.
Sort of, but this one wasn't like it. It had them farther apart. And on this one doesn't. This one, whenever you're adjusting the ignition timing on a vehicle with this kind of ignition on it, you're actually changing the rotor alignment and the timing at the same time. On the Jeeps and the Dodges and on some of the like early E3 Fords, you could change rotor alignment without changing timing. If your rotor alignment's not right, it'll jump and hit the wrong post like you're talking about. This one here wasn't really gonna, that typically didn't happen on the ones where you turn the distributor to set the timing. Only on the ones where you have a crank sensor and a distributor. Everybody feels like, well, I'll just turn the distributor, set the timing, all you do is alter your rotor alignment, screw everything up. All right. I saw a problem like this one several years ago on a 93 2.3 liter Tempo that comes from my service bay from the body shop. The body shop had done some work to repair it. The car had rear-ended somebody. It broke the distributor because the distributor was right in front of the engine. And they got a Ford authorized remanufactured distributor from the parts room to replace the distributor. After they got it all put back together, and they were smart enough that when they pulled the distributor out, they would mark it, mark where the rotor was pointing on the housing, and they put it back in there the same way. And it cranked up, but when you give it gas, it would drop cylinder number 3. And I had put the scope on it and discovered it was dropping cylinder number 3 whenever you would throttle it up. Kind of like that right there. You see? And when you look at knowing the firing order, you can tell. And so it would consistently drop cylinder number 3 as the engine was throttled up. Took a few minutes to figure this one out. And this Mustang reminded me of that Tempo. This is a case where past experience kind of leads you in the direction you need to go. Now that doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes past experience will make you think you know what's wrong when you don't have a clue. And I've been there too. Now, your profile ignition pickup, you got this Hall effect switch here. You can see it over there on that board if you look at it. Whenever you turn this thing through, every time that thing passes in between this, it basically will put a signal over the PCM. And it uses that profile ignition. This is what it looks like on the scope. It uses RPM. See a high RPM, low RPM. Notice the pattern changes a little bit because of the frequency of it. But what it uses this signal for, it uses this signal to determine how fast to fire the fuel injectors. Now, when you're idling, your fuel injectors are going click, 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 click. And as you give it gas and you pick up speed, they go click, 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 click. But then the pulse width is modified by your engine coolant temperature and your throttle, and it adds extra squirts when you're giving it the gas, and it wants to know how fast you're pressing the gas and so on and so forth. And as it back at closed throttle, blah, blah. This is what that engine looked like, and it had that little boot on the distributor. All right, so, hold on. Up to 1991, they had a narrow segment right here. 92 to 94, they did away with that. Now, why would they do away with what they call signature PIP? Because they used that narrow segment to determine where cylinder number 1 was. So why would they do away with that in 92? What would they change, do you suppose, it would cause them not to need the narrower vane on the signature pip? See that one there? You can see the difference in it right there. Up to 91, 92 to 94. They did away with tempo in 94 and came out with contour, which wasn't as good of a car. One way or another, what do you think? Somebody tell me. What would these have that that one wouldn't have? What do most engines today use to determine which one, where cylinder number one is?
You mean like without distributors?
What sensor tells it? Huh?
Cam sensor.
Cam sensor. The cam sensor is what tells it where cylinder number one is. And it, on the ones that are adjustable, it usually makes its cut at 24 degrees after top dead center, which since your fire is burned out by that time, that typically means it can squirt the next fuel. It ordinarily uses the cam sensor more for fuel injector timing than anything else on the ones that I'm familiar with. I didn't type all the algorithms, so I might be wrong about that on some vehicles. All right, so Tempos went CEFI in 1992 because they got a cam position sensor. And that one right there, you know, they did away with that narrowed segment. And so what happened at the body shop is when they got one out of the Fred Jones, they called it, Ford Authorized Remanufacturer, FAR, and they dropped it in there and they had put a 91 model vane cup on that 93 distributor. And so when you cracked the throttle, it was confused by this and it would stop firing the coil when number 3 came around. So basically all I had to do on that particular one, I could take a couple of screws out of the one that I was working on and just swap out the cup off the original distributor that had been busted, and that fixed that car. It wasn't really all that hard to do. Alright, so, alright, the Tempo produced a disappearing spark on cylinder number 3 exactly like we were seeing here. And since 3 follows 1 in the Tempo's 4-cylinder firing order, as the timing was advanced by the PCM during the increase in engine speed, 3 would drop out because of the unexpected duty cycle in one part of the square wave signal. So this set of circumstances didn't apply to the Mustang 5-liter though, since its calibration still called for signature pip. So it wasn't that somebody put the wrong vane cup in there. Couldn't have been that, but there was something going on. Now, these right here, these little signals right here that you're looking at are what the engine controller is watching. Okay, now this, and that's on this particular car. IDM stands for Ignition Diagnostic Monitor, and that's what the computer sees by watching primary ignition. In other words, it's kind of like whenever you put your test light on there and it's blinking, like I'm always showing you, and it pulses heavier if you unplug a plug wire. You know, it's watching that and it can tell if it's got a, you know, a taller or a shorter spike, and it'll actually throw a code. Spout is spark output. That's that little jumper plug you pull out when you're going to set the ignition timing. And that's how that yellow wire that, or it's pink on some of them, and when you unplug that, when it takes the computer out of the loop, you can adjust the timing without the computer jacking around with it while you're trying to adjust it. Profile ignition pickup is like it. Now look at these right here. See how they've got a little bite taken out of that corner? Now and again, that's got to do with how it's changing the timing and all that in your signature pip right there. Now, the secondary scope pattern on the Mustang remained normal at idle, but it was snaggletooth at the high RPM. So I decided I would just go ahead and measure the electrodes on the spark plug, you know, and kind of run out of some of the other ideas. I'm just going to see if we got some spark plugs that are screwy. This particular one came off of a different deal. That's when I was using IDS. That spark plug there only had 200 ohms of resistance, and it's supposed to have a lot more than that, usually 4,000 to 8,000 ohms. The 3 to 6 is a tighter, but anyway, if it's more than 7,000, I replace it. Well, the Mustang's plugs measured about 3,500 each, so we put all that back on and made sure the wire route was right. Number 3 tower was going dead. If we were measuring the spark by using our timing light and going from one cylinder to the other. You can actually do this while you're driving down the road if you got a timing light and you got spark plug wires. And I've troubleshot some that were cutting up by putting the timing light, and if it's got a long cord on it, you can pull it into the car and just tape the trigger and let it flash. If it's got a trigger, you know, some of them you just turn on. And whenever it starts cutting up, if that flash gets real irregular, then you know you got some kind of a secondary ignition issue. The number 3 tower, though, was going dark at 3,000 RPM. Okay, so we actually took our profile ignition pickup right here coming out of that distributor connector, which was that blue wire, and that, look at that scope pattern. When this skipping was going on, it was like we were losing some of our little square wave signals. This thing should have been nice and even all the way across, and it wasn't. Now, I didn't snapshot, I didn't take a picture of one, I took a picture on my camera, and it's not a real good picture, but you can see what's going on. We're losing some of these, but only at higher speed, so what's gonna cause that to happen? This is the profile ignition pickup in here that you're seeing on that wave. So what in the Sam Hill's gonna cause that? Measured at distributor connector pin number 4. You got any ideas?
So you got a distributor with the pit mark, right?
It's got signature pin. This one does.
The engine controller that they put on there set
Well-
up for that?
Well, we put a different one.
Oh, yeah, but they upgraded.
We replaced it, we corrected the engine controller, because it wouldn't even start with the one they put on there. But this right here, these right here are far enough apart to where you can tell that there's one completely missing.
Yeah.
And it's not like that idling, only when it starts this hogwash. If it starts dropping cylinders, you're also gonna see that. So you see, it's really a good idea to scope more than one thing that's related to the same deal, and that's what we were doing. And that old scope right there was not a digital storage oscilloscope, thus I had to take the photo. Well, instead of a nice even square wave, we noticed one wave is becoming twice as wide as all the others, or going away completely, when it started to skip. And so we were closing in on this. But look at this. When I pull that cup out of there, and you can take a couple of screws on this one and pull it out, some of it's made onto the shaft. Look at those marks right there, where it had been hitting. And when the temperature changed and the metal expanded and contracted or whatever, it would actually move over and start banging on those two. And that's what we wound up seeing. See that? Not supposed to be like that. You see those signature marks are not here, they're not there. It was only hitting on those two. And the profile ignition pickup that was in the distributor, the DU30 I think used to be the, I can't remember, but anyway, whatever the module's number, the sensor number was, you see how that one's all screwed up and out of line? Where that's been hitting it? It was an aftermarket when it came out of a white box somewhere. I mean, they changed a bunch of parts on this car. I don't know why they originally started working on it. I don't know why it died. I don't know when they, the more they worked on it, obviously the worse it got. This is what it was supposed to look like. See how it's perfectly supposed to line up? And that one had obviously been hit and been knocked over there crooked. And so we replaced this. And this right here wasn't anything that merited replacement, necessarily. But that was the reason why we were having that. And so, okay, I need to hear some observations from you guys on this one. What do you think?
Why was it just sitting on those two?
Well, the only thing that it wasn't exactly round,
Okay.
basically, apparently. So I don't know if maybe somebody bent it when they were working on it, because you couldn't really tell. We actually, when we put we had to pull a distributor out to change that stator. And when we pull the distributor out to change the stator, we put the shaft back down there and turned it through to make sure it wasn't hitting when we spun it with our fingers. And it wasn't. But I don't know if there was a little bit of irregularity and product variability whenever they make something like that. It's not going to be perfect. You might even notice a lot of the stuff that you see. Have you ever bothered you when you're driving down the road and you see the tires on a car and it looks like the hubcaps are not,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It bothers me. It seems like it ought to be better than that. Or you'll see a wheel that looks like that, but now some of them look like they were machined to be perfect. And you can't even see any movement at all except they're just riding down the road smooth. Anything that spins, if they feel like it doesn't have to be perfect, they'll let it be a little irregular. That's basically the way it is. Stamped steel wheels are kind of like that. That's why you gotta make sure that you check the run out when you're doing alignments and all. But anyway, that was one of those things. Now tomorrow, you probably won't want to miss, we got some really good help desk stuff, some more of those, so you can sort of figure out what's going on with these people's cars whenever they send emails in and all that. And I hope you'll get enough out of that to where whenever you're talking to somebody about something, maybe you can retain some of this stuff and figure out what's going on. Now, are you going to be able to fix something with your leaf? How did your Trailblazer do after we did the throttle body cleaning and all that?
It's doing a little better. It's still doing it though.
Is y'all doing some? All right, what we always want to do on that, we always want to do what's cheap and easy first. Just like we did on Justin's, or we cleaned his throttle body and fixed his problem. Now yours is different. Is it acting any different, or is it just like it was, or what?
It's still about the same.
Yeah, so you got the throttle body, you said throttle body wasn't that dirty anyway.
What is it doing?
Yeah, tell him what it's doing.
It will cut out sometimes when you go to like a stoplight or something, or if you go match the gas, it will like idle.
It sits there and won't move, and then kinda like you were talking about.
Electronic throttle body?
Yeah, it's electronic throttle body.
I wonder if the idle air controls.
It doesn't have that on electronic throttle body. I mean, the
Well,
electronic throttle body closes, you know, well, this one here, it's not exactly like what he's got, but you might notice it doesn't have any kind of idle air control because it doesn't need it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because it can move the throttle plate. This is actually the one that closes off when you're spinning the wheels, but off of that Lexus. But anyway, that's something we can look at again.